My name's Christine Bell, and I just came tonight to introduce myself. I'm a candidate for State Senate in District Number 8, and Harrison Township is part of District Number 8. It has changed recently. Used to be the District Number 11, where my opponent, Jack Brandenburg, is in now, but it's changed to Number 8. And I just wanted to introduce myself. I became a resident homeowner in Chesterfield Township in 1971. I've been married for nearly 46 years to a man who's a retired high school math teacher. I have 3 adult children who all attended Anchor Bay Public Schools. I have a law degree from Thomas Cooley Law School in Lansing. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Education from Oakland University. I'm currently on the Board of Trustees in Chesterfield Township. I'm an attorney at law. I'm a sole practitioner. I deal mostly with probate law. Before I became licensed to practice law in Michigan, I was a teacher. I was a clerk typist in the Macomb County Circuit Court for a while. And I worked for a while at the circulation desk in the Chesterfield Township Public Library. And many people have told me, or asked me, rather, why I decided to run. Well, what first got my attention was the fact that my opponent was running unopposed, and I decided I just couldn't tolerate that. And I started looking into his voting history in the Senate, and frankly, I was shocked. In very many cases, he voted opposite to what I thought a reasonable person should have voted. And I have a long list of examples, several pages worth, which I won't read tonight in the interest of time management. I'm qualified for this position. I have an excellent formal education. My experience that I've had and the skills that I've used in the Board of Trustees can be easily transferred to the state level. I have a conscience. That's really important. I care about the welfare of children and working families and elderly citizens. Michigan Township Association has written that I am, and I quote, certainly well qualified to serve in the state legislature. The North Macomb Democratic Club and the St. Clair Shores Democratic Club have both encouraged me in my campaign. I have been endorsed by MEA, AFT, AFSCME, and AFL-CIO. And I want to make it easy for people to contact me directly. So I will invite you to email me at christinebelljd@sbcglobal.net and visit my website at bellforsenate.net. And I thank you very much for your attention and letting me come to the podium tonight. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bill Serville, resident. I have a couple questions about this informational piece. Am I right in saying this is going to be 2 sides of a postcard mailing? And of course, the language that was discussed may or may not be there. What I don't see on there is the original workshop talked about $1.25 million, because that was what was recommended by the engineering firm. And there was some talk by myself and at least Mr. Senstock, possibly other people, that you need to address drainage. You don't say anything on here about drainage. So if you pave roads without drainage, I think it should be mentioned in there if you can fit it in. But I believe that this issue about private roads being dedicated if they meet county standards is 60 foot wide. I'll give you one example. Mast Court is a 15-foot wide private road. Now, I can't speak for the county, but I'm pretty sure they're never going to accept that road as a dedicated road. The houses are 4 to 6 feet away from the 15-foot easement. From between building and building is 22, 23 feet. There's no turnaround. You have to drive down another private road to get out of there. So it's misleading for the people that read this to think, especially on Mast Court, well, wow, we can get our road paved. Maybe that'll solve the bumps, because there's holes this deep in that road. Another thing is, the bike paths. You say paths, but you don't mention bike path. I think that word should be in there, because that's the paths you're talking about, I assume. Is that correct? Could I get a response to that?
I will respond to your questions, as I always do, after public comment.
Okay. And you at the workshops, I thought you had stated that this was going to be an incentive for people to put the sewers in, that you'd only do this if they agreed to put the sewers in at the same time. I don't see that in here. Why not? If you don't put the sewers in, you're going to rip the road completely up putting the sewer in when you do it. You need leads going to every property. Sewer is going to be on one side or the other. You're going to have to cross that road 50 times on these roads that are in the interior. There's 100 houses on every one of those roads. So, I don't think you're being fully disclosed, you're not, full disclosure here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Senstock, 31698 San Juan. You're right, they're not fully disclosing. That's why it's an advocacy piece. They don't want the people to know the bad stuff or the stuff that they don't agree with. We've talked about that earlier tonight. So they don't put it in there. That's a problem. Additionally, I think I've heard this, and I've bit my tongue for a long time now on this road millage, but I keep hearing about the study that was done by the road committee that was formed. I believe it consisted of Mr. Verkes, Mr. Witt, and Mr. Capro. Not a more loyal bunch could you ever get. They're for this road millage no matter what. But the fact is that most people should understand that that committee and that study that was done, that I believe it was mentioned earlier, we spent $8,000 for, the actual road that was, the roads that were actually surveyed, they used a 2008 survey. Not an up-to-date survey, a 2008 survey. See, I attended those meetings. I listened to everything. So again, you're telling the people what you want them to hear, not what they should hear. The fact is that that road committee had decided they were going to put in a road millage no matter what came up. And that's what they did. We had a gentleman ask just now about the drainage. The cost of repairing a road, the drainage is roughly 50% of the cost or more. So if you're going to spend $100,000 on a road, you're going to spend $150,000 on that road to get the proper drainage. Almost every road that needs to be repaired in Harrison Township has improper drainage. In Venice Shores, we've had the road commission in. The road commission came in and told us that for the 5 remaining roads, I believe it's 5, 1, 2, 3, 4 remaining roads that haven't been paved already, it's going to cost $750,000 for that road, for those roads. That's the minimum. That's in today's cost. That's not in 5 years down the road, or 10 years down the road, or 20 years down the road, which this millage is going to take. So you don't have the money, but you'll have a nice big slush fund to deal out to your friends, your relatives, your business associates, anybody that you want to take care of. You'll have that big slush fund out there, and it's about $1.2 million, right? $1,255,000. You'll be able to cover the cost of the paths, what new paths you want, and we've got lots of them I know you want to do. But in addition, you'll be able to take money from the general fund that is currently being used to repair the paths and maintain the paths, and you'll now be able to take it out of the slush fund because you wrote that in there. 2%. So every year you're gonna generate $25,000 for path repair. The fact of the matter is, this is a bad deal for the residents of Harrison Township. It's a very bad deal. The people out in Huron Point, they put in a road millage and, let's see, all of the drainage and all that stuff they did, spent millions on it when they did it. Go drive their roads. If you spent $50,000 out there in a year, I'd be surprised. Those roads are in good shape. My road is perfect. All the cement roads in this township are not gonna be touched, and there's a lot of them. So what are we talking about here? We want the slush fund to take care of. Well, we want it to take care of the non-paved roads in the middle of the township. You kind of glossed over the fact, though, that those people are gonna have to come up with a special assessment district to cover it. Because you're only gonna pay 25%. Well, wait, maybe they'll still vote for it because voters are dumb. That's what you're figuring. I'd urge everybody in this township, whether you get one of these cards or not, to vote no on this road millage. It's a bunch of money that's gonna be spent to establish a slush fund that will not get your roads fixed any faster than if you did your own special assessment, or if you just waited for the county to come in, because they fix 50% of the roads for this article here per year anyhow. So, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll move back to board comment. First, an update. I know that the subject of Metro Parkway and the maintenance for Metro Parkway has been brought up in the past. I recently learned today, I believe Clinton Township learned late last week, that HCMA, or the Huron-Clinton Metro Park Authority, will no longer be maintaining Metro Parkway. Currently, the contract they had was Metro Parkway all the way to Utica. They were responsible. It's ultimately the responsibility of the Department of Roads for the center, the median. HCMA took care of that. HCMA also contracted, or I should say Clinton Township contracted with HCMA to maintain some of their right-of-ways where they have bike paths throughout Clinton Township. HCMA gave as a reason, actually the director at the beach gave as a reason to me that they were utilizing a lot of their skilled labor to do a lot of that work. And by the time they were out at Utica Road from Lake St. Clair Metro Park, they were well outside of their scope. They had a breakdown. It became cost prohibitive for them to do the work. The reason why Clinton Township learned about it last week, and I only learned about it today apparently, is because they severed their relationship with Clinton Township. HCMA at this point has agreed to maintain the relationship they have with Harrison Township to maintain the paths that we have and the sweeping and plowing of the paths at a very, very competitive rate. So we're fortunate they're continuing that relationship. At this point, though, the maintenance of Metro Parkway reverts back to the Department of Roads, and what decision they make, whether they choose to do it themselves or contract that work out, remains to be seen. It's kind of just breaking news, I suppose.
So did they give up their right to do the curb cuts?
I can't tell you.
No, that's really the question. Because
They give up their right to do the curb cuts.
Right. So,
Who's they?
So HCMA all along, so we have, two curb cuts, right? We have Lance Cruz and North Point Parkway. They had to shut down because we're only allowed two cuts, right?
Well,
And there was always said that that's because HCMA owned and maintained Metro Parkway. But if they're reverting that, maybe we can get more curb cuts into 16 Mile Road now.
yeah. Certainly a subject unrelated to mowing.
Oh, no, I'm just mentioning it
Yeah.
since you're talking.
Mowing
about it.
grass and curb cuts are probably two completely different departments and responsibilities. HCMA was doing the service for a cost for the Department of Roads. They're no longer mowing grass. That's what it comes down to.
I misunderstood you then. I'm
Yep.
sorry.
There was a question asked about the hospital, future use approval. there's a combination of things. If that property were to be reused, certainly gonna require planning commission approval, but it's likely to require some approval or issue from this board, because I believe as it's currently zoned, it's not zoned for the use, I mean, it's a non-conforming, use, so there's probably pretty extensive approvals that'll be required, but primarily, planning commission, to answer the resident's question, planning commission has, the responsibility to approve uses of property. There was a question about water and sewer costs in the road millage, especially as it pertains to the center of the township. And the answer is no, we can't. As a matter of fact, water and sewer is an enterprise fund. You can't mix those funds. So the water and sewer funds associated with maintenance, installation, and repair of water mains and sewer mains is a completely separate cost relative to roads. So the short answer is no. If this road millage were to pass, none of those funds are going to be used to pay for any water and sewer improvements or repairs. They can't be. The one resident indicated that she drives a bus for the township. It's frequently in for repairs. I would say that's an argument to take a look at repairing the roads. I mean, not just our township buses, but all the school buses that traverse our roads are going to have a life cycle dependent on the quality of roads that they drive on. A resident asked about the Sunnybrook silt removal bags or bladders. Mr. Witt, I know you'd had a date. I thought it was November 1.
They're supposed to be out by November, but it's not a hard date. It depends on whether they're dry or not.
Weather conditions.
Weather conditions. We are holding back a portion of the project. I think it's roughly 10% of the entire cost of the project.
It's about 50,000.
I think it's 15,000.
15,000.
Yeah, and holding that back until that project's removed. And I can assure you that they desperately want that money because they bid the project a little thin, and that's their profit at this point. So they will be doing the work, and it will be graded out normally, and we'll make sure that it's brought back to the proper condition before we issue that final check.
Was there also the potential that they may store one bladder back on the property or no?
There was some discussion, but they reached out to residents, and at this point, they haven't received enough response back that people will be interested next year to make it a cost-effective proposal.
Right, okay. So it should be November, weather permitting, that those should be removed and graded. Let's see, issue about, one of the residents asked about why the informational piece doesn't address drainage. There's a lot of things that the piece doesn't address in terms of construction materials and base and how it intertwines with water and sewer projects, infrastructure. It's a matter of public record that when we met, we discussed the fact that there is a need for drainage. I know that someone indicated that the cost for drainage could be greater than the cost for roads. I'm not sure about that, but I would certainly be willing to agree that on some roads, the cost to repair or improve drainage can be significant. The fact is, on some roads, there's no need to improve or maintain the drainage. The drainage as it is sufficient. So it's difficult to say that every road is going to need X% of additional funding to address drainage. We asked that question of our engineer. He gave us an estimate of approximately 20%. We went from 1.25 from the recommendation up to 1.5. But it's important to note that the road committee, really through Wade Trim, produced a document that, gosh, I don't remember, it was either 8 or 9 pages or 10 pages, I don't remember, but it was several pages with data, with analysis, with the various options. You know, it's a public document. We can make that available, but to put that in a half-page postcard just becomes difficult. So there's a lot of things that the road committee discussed. Certainly drainage was one of them, but when I consider the questions that people ask me, folks come in wanting to know about what's it going to cost, when's it going to happen, how come someone else isn't doing it. Those are the questions I tried to answer. But for sure, I'm sure there's other questions, and because of that, we put a number on there, say, you know, if you got other questions, you can certainly call the township. The issue relative to county standards, Mast Court is going to be a tough one. I don't even know that it's a road. It's literally a path across people's property. There isn't even a right-of-way there. That isn't, I don't know of another condition that's like that in the township or practically anywhere. Now, there is a road adjacent to it that could be improved, and that would be Church Street. And folks might say, well, let's dedicate that to the use of the public. So there are options even in that area. But the private roads that we're talking about, there's a handful of them in the township where most residents who live on them think they're public roads, and they only find out when they call the Department of Roads and ask them to put cold patch down. Department of Roads say, we can't, it's a private road. We don't maintain your road for you. They'll do it for an SAD or for a cost. But certainly Mast Court would be one of those that has a challenge, and I suppose that's the reason why someone put Church Street in parallel to it. The term that I used for paths in the informational piece is non-motorized path system. That's the legal term. It's not a hiking path, it's not a bike path, it's non-motorized paths. That's the legal term. That's what the grant was that we received, and that's what those paths are. There's basically two kinds of paths. There's motorized travel paths and there's non-motorized. Non-motorized is a sidewalk. It could be a 10-foot wide path. It could be a lot of things. It could be a pedestrian bridge over a body of water. But non-motorized path is the term I use because that's the legal term. The data that was used in the road study was from a 2008-2009 PACER study, P-A-S-E-R. SEMCOG supplied that data to us. We made a decision to use that data. Had we gone and asked Wade Trim to go out and reassess all of our roads, it would have been at least a 5-figure cost. We had data from a windshield, what they considered to be a windshield survey. It's true, it's 4 years old at the time we did the study, but it's indicative of the quality of the roads. There really aren't a lot of roads that were repaved from 2009 to 2013. But the resident is correct, the data that was used was from 2009. It's the same data that was used in some of the other road studies that we looked at. The committee decided they were all for a millage. Well, the fact is, the committee can't decide we're for a millage. The residents decide they're for a millage. The committee merely looked at all the funding options and made the decision that they believed that that was the most efficient way to do it, and we heard from our engineer explain that. But the best part about it, again, is the residents get to decide. It's not a decision that this board makes. I glossed over the 25% payment in gravel roads. It says the fund will pay for 25% of the cost to pave gravel roads. I don't know how much more plainly I can state what the policy is. In fact, I think it's taken right from our policy. That's what this board adopted. So I don't know how I'm glossing over that. This is not a slush fund. This fund, if it were to be elected by the voters to assess the millage and collected, it's got to be spent for roads. This board decided they thought the fairest way to do it would have a citizen committee look at that process. It's ultimately subject to this board. So a slush fund for who? A slush fund for, I don't know what that could be. This board of 7 is responsible to spend the funds that are received by Harrison Township on behalf of its residents. This township board receives a lot more than 1.5 mils currently. And we have a responsibility to spend revenue sharing dollars, cable franchise fees, millages for police and fire, a lot of budgets. This 1.5 mil millage would be a small component of that. And we're trying to set it up so that if it does pass, that it has public oversight. And lastly, I don't know where this came from, the county does not fix 50% of our roads. Rather, the county is prohibited to spend any more than 50% of the cost. Without matching dollars, again, it's real simple. No public local roads are going to be repaved anywhere in Michigan using state funds unless there's at least a 50% match. And the $2 million that was approved in the current and prior county budget for road repairs requires a 50% match. We voted on it a year ago, this board did. And at this point, the last I spoke with the Department of Roads, no one was successful in even applying for that. So the $2 million from last year, $0 were spent because nobody applied for that millage, or that match. So I don't like the idea of a millage, of voting for a millage. What I know is no matter where the source of revenue is, the road in front of your home and in front of my home is not going to be fixed unless I pay for it, and you pay for your road. You can pay through gas taxes, you can pay through a millage, you can pay for a special assessment district, but there's no magic bucket of money that's gonna repair our roads. If we wanna do them, we're gonna have to come up with that money ourselves. A lot of different ways to do it, and no is an okay answer. If folks don't wanna support the millage, that's perfectly all right. It's a personal choice. That's why I think voting is the best system, so try to answer some questions there.
Motion to adjourn? Support.
We've got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Tominelli to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, board.